Right, everyone. So, fairly quick one today. I wasn't always in decent shape. In fact, when I started my fitness journey, I was actually in pretty horrendous shape. Now, before the part of my story that you even know about, the bit where I'd been getting into the gym, the results were slow. I went and worked my, degree apprenticeship, trying to balance full-time work in finance with a degree, and then starting my business, and that's how we came up with our pinnacle approach. If I rewind back to all of that, back to being at the very start, you'll see where this is going. I had grown up immensely out of shape. I was never really pushed in terms of sports. I was always pushed very much academically. Now, when I went through puberty, I realized that I was in pretty horrendous shape. And mixed with that little growth spurt that I had, I also kind of starved myself. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I just thought eating healthy was the way to go. And I really did just go away, Rigby. And I really did just eat salads. So I became an absolute twig. And that's how you see that starter photo, literally like right over there. So I was super, super skinny, had no idea what I was actually doing. To get from that point, the start of my journey, or hell, even before that when I was like really skinny fat, to get to the point where years later, I'm in pretty good shape. Obviously, the transformation that you see over there was when I was competing. That entails many, many different phases. Okay, and understanding how to navigate each of those different phases, there's only so many different contexts that will come up in your fitness journey throughout your entire life. There'll be phases that are a little bit more full on, maybe when you were younger, had the time to dedicate to the gym. There'll be phases that are a little bit more balanced. There'll be phases where it's a little bit in between. Maybe your nutrition has to be that little bit more tightened up to drop some body fat. And that is really the key to learning how to manage fitness over the long term, how to continue to progress no matter what comes up. And something I'm asked all the time is, Kev, you really believe that in 4 months you can teach someone everything that they need so that they never need another coach again? Yeah, 100%. And the way in which we do that is by splitting things up phase by phase. If you do an 8-week challenge, then you're going to get to the back end of that challenge and you've lost a bit of weight. You've dieted super, super hard for that prize money that the coach is going to give you. And then when it's all said and done, you're going to go on your way. You have no idea what that next phase looks like. Okay? Now, the key is to understand that to get body fat off requires a deficit, which is inherently a bit more intense than maintaining where your composition is at. Now, this is a blessing because it means that you do not have to go quite as hard all the time to maintain your results. Once you've got the results, it's a lot easier to maintain. You can relax things a little bit, okay? You have a little bit more margin with your calories and eating off plan a little bit, and you'll still be able to maintain your body composition. So that means that in terms of things like sustainable dieting, how to continue to keep a great body composition, the fat loss side of things is not actually quite as relevant. There are people out there who will say, well, if you lose weight fast, then there's no way you can keep it off because you can't sustain it. Like, yeah, that's fine because the goal is not to diet forever. You're not meant to be in a deficit for a year plus, unless you have like, a crazy, crazy amount of weight to lose. But you should be doing what is necessary in that fat loss phase. You will have to be a little bit more tight with your food. You will have to have more boundaries in place, not accepting every drink, every snack, every celebration that gets offered to you. That might mean some sober nights out, some sober business events. There will need to be that little bit of restriction so that you can dig enough out of your intake to get you into a deficit to allow you to drop the body fat. And that means there can be merit to actually going a little bit more aggressive. That means that if you prefer to, proverbially slam the door to yank the tooth out rather than just slowly wiggling and suffering that, albeit a little bit less pain over a longer period of time, if you prefer to just get it all out of the way, you can go a little bit more ham. Because the key to maintaining it, and sure, this will give you maybe a little bit more uphill, you will be a little bit more hungry, you will have to be a little bit more careful with the protocols in order to get those results, but the key to maintaining it is then in understanding what a reverse dieting phase looks like. So oftentimes when a client comes to me, they'll drop, in 12 weeks, sometimes I've seen guys come out of a diet, they drop quick enough, and in 12 weeks after that we've then got 4 weeks where we start reversing them, and I teach them how to build up their food intake again so that they can maintain on higher food. Not only that, But the actual strategy, the approach to nutrition, allows them to relax with things a bit. It gives them a little bit more margin, so they don't have to be quite as anal as they were to be perfectly in that deficit. They've got a little bit more margin. It allows them to chill out a little bit around food and maintain those results with ease. So that means that then their nutrition is locked in forever, and they will reverse at a very comfortable rate. If they then want to do a muscle building phase with us, a bulk, then that's an added bonus. But realistically, one of the biggest keys to building muscle, and there are a lot of good muscle gain transformations up there, is just time. Okay, there's a lot that I can do in terms of watching over a client's progression. I've had clients do entire bulking phases with me. And there are things that we can do to really accelerate those results. And especially then when it comes down to, improving particular body parts, how to program properly for, a chest specific phase, things like that. But the biggest asset for muscle gain, especially naturally without drugs, is time. Okay. The longer you're progressing those lifts, the stronger you get years down the line, time. So that is always almost like an added bonus. But my typical client journey looks like dropping 20 to 50 pounds in anywhere between 12 to 24 weeks, reverse dieting, and that is kind of the basis of the program. After that point, a client has kind of everything that they desperately need from me anyway, and usually they want to see through that reverse diet. They want to get nice and comfortable. So our program is 4 months long, and plenty of clients, just do the 4 months. They're set to go after that. Our average client retention is about 8 to 12. So usually they'll then do a bit of muscle building afterwards, just so they've got kind of everything that I can teach them more or less in those 8 to 12 months. And then they're Gucci to go. Because again, then through that building phase, we pay a little bit more attention to the training side of things to optimize that progression. So each phase has its own kind of focal point to really dive into, so to speak. So once you've been through every phase, you kind of know what to do. You know the approaches that are better or worse for what your lifestyle looks like through a fat loss phase, through a muscle building phase, etc., etc. When you've been through every phase with me, you're not going to need another coach because you've experienced everything. You know how to manage it all. So that is the big part. And then on the longer term, that is really how you see how those phases start to fit together. This is our idea of phase planning. So, for example, bulking during the summer months, not many people want to do. They want to look their best, so they want to be cutting during the summer months. But the key is that during the summers, when you have all those events, that's actually the best time to have a maintenance phase. You want to be lean before the summer and in a good position to hold it. So ideally, when we're mapping out those timelines, we know that we want to get to that target weight, etc., before the summer season really kicks off, because it's going to be a lot easier to maintain that weight during the summer and that margin around those events, enjoying a few drinks, etc. Then, with those few weeks mapped out, that also means that you know that the finish line is there. Those last few weeks of a diet where maybe you have to be a little bit hungry, in the short term, you have to dig that little bit harder. You need to sacrifice just a little bit more of your time to get the extra steps in. You know that that's all temporary because you can see that on the timeline. Okay, a few more weeks to go, and then I get to relax, go back into a maintenance phase. Then you're bulking, you reverse your weight more slowly than you were losing it. That means that okay, if I'm going up at 0.2 kilos a week, I have about this many weeks and until I start to get to a position where my composition's looking a little bit more fluffy. And that means that if you time that right, then I'll take you through to January, where you then cut down for summer again. So if you always know what's coming next, you're always going to have that accountability to commit to the phase at hand. And committing to the phase, not bailing on it early, is the key. Because the progress that you really want is often on the other side of discomfort. When you start to feel flat when you're dieting for a longer period of time, that glycogen storage isn't what it was. You're not storing as many carbs. You're going to look a little bit more flat and withered. But what's on the other side of that is losing more body fat, getting that definition, flattening the belly, everything that you want. When you're getting a little bit more fluffy in a gaining phase, when you're basically almost having to force feed yourself to get the food down, the gains that you want, the performance in the gym, it's on the other side of that. So seeing through the phase, committing to it, having it all mapped out is how you always have that little bit of extra accountability. You always have that motivation. You always know what's coming next. There's never this limbo where, because you don't have some sort of, I wouldn't say even necessarily a strict goal to be aiming towards, but if you at least know what the next phase demands from you logistically on a day-to-day basis, then you're always going to have the structure to keep going, keep taking steps forward. Now my cat is starting to get very, very hungry. So don't you shush. So I'm gonna go feed this little guy because clearly he can't commit to his dieting phase. But I really hope that you guys found some value from this. I hope that you can use this to get some great results in the long term. And of course, if you fancy my help in setting you up with the approach that's gonna get you fit for life, just DM me, Lean on Instagram. We can talk a little bit more. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.